Welcome to the Why Music podcast, where we talk to independent artists about their journeys, the inspirations behind their music, and ultimately why they make music. This next artist is a Boston native and self proclaimed wholesome sad girl. Having brought her indie pop energy down to Nashville, she's got an album and more under her belt with plenty else on the way. Welcome, Amber.
Hi, and hi everybody listening. What's up?
I always like to start with where your story with music kind of all started.
Oh, wow. It's been like a long one, I think. I actually have been telling this story like a lot recently, but so I've always sang like growing up, like I've always like loved music and loved singing. My mom was the director of like the children's choir at my church growing up, so she like naturally forced like all of her kids to do it. But I didn't really mind that because I just loved to sing anyway. um but I really started writing like pretty early, like I would say like in elementary school. I was never good at anything. I've never been good at anything except for music, honestly. And this is like so lame, but I would like bring I would bring like a journal outside during recess and like write songs. And um I think that was kind of like where I started like writing. I was a very like emotive child, very sensitive, almost like, yeah, just a little bit emotional, and I think that's okay. But I like would write a lot as a kid, and me and my sisters would write songs together, and we would like pretend that we were like in a pop girl group and stuff like that. So, but like everyone else, I feel like, um, yeah, I feel like my sisters, like, they liked music, but I like remember like seeing it as like, this is gonna be my life, this is gonna be it for me. And in high school I asked for a guitar for Christmas, and I just like really went for it, and I just kind of been writing and like performing and all of that since I was like 15, I would say. I went to school for music. I majored in songwriting. Um, and I've just kind of been releasing music independently for the last, yeah, I think my first EP was out in 2017. So I've just kind of been releasing independently for a solid 7 years, I would say. So that's kind of where everything started.
So, at what point in writing and then performing and doing all the
Mm-hmm.
things was it like, I'm gonna make the shift and like start doing like the independent artist thing, like releasing music, having the whole project all together? When was that kind of like put
Was
into
that,
place?
mm, I think I've always wanted to do it. I think that it was always something that like I didn't necessarily see as a hobby, but something that I wanted to like really fight for and go for. So, I mean, I was writing a lot in high school. Um, and um, sorry, my roommate's dog, she has like separation anxiety. So she like has to be in the room with me at all times. And she's just like sitting on my bed. Sorry, I just got distracted. But anyway, so I yeah, I was always writing, and I never really, I don't know what it was. There was just something in me that was like, this is gonna work out for me, and over my dead body if it doesn't. And so I think it was in college that I was like, oh, like it's possible to put music out. Like it's actually not hard to do, which, I mean, it takes a lot of money, but it wasn't really necessarily hard because we live in the age of streaming. Well, it was right when streaming got popular and right when streaming was like a thing. Um, and so it's like, oh, we all can put music out, you know? And I just put out my first song, and it was good. So He was like, you know what? People seem to really like this, so I'm just gonna like keep doing it. So that was kind of where it started, I think.
it's it's always interesting because it's like when you get that, when you have that first, and if it's, especially if it's something that's like well received, it's like, oh, okay, like this is what the people like. I'm gonna keep giving the people what they like, and we're gonna keep doing the
Yeah,
things.
right, for sure.
It doesn't get more encouraging than that, you know, a positive response on
Yeah.
something that you creatively made, like say less.
Yeah. I think that I was a little bit insecure about like my voice and how I sang. Like I went to like a music school, so it's like everybody is the best from where they came from. So that's like it's really hard to be the best for where you come from, and then and everybody is the best from where they come from. So it's like there's so many different levels of talent. And so I never felt like my voice was necessarily that good. So I was like, oh, like no one is listening. John Mayer is like my hero, but we can get into that later. But like no one is listening to John Mayer because his voice is like incredible. Like we're not listening to him. Like he's a good singer, you know, like he's not tone deaf. But like no one is listening to him like, "Oh my gosh, what a voice." We're listening to him for those songs and those stories that he tells. So I was like, if I can get really good at the storytelling and the songs, then like no one is going to care about like my voice, which is like dumb because I'm not a bad singer. I'm like, so I don't know why I thought that. Um, but it was like, it was kind of cool because I felt like people that I looked up to, like vocally, would always like compliment me on my writing, which is like so insane to me because it's like, guys, like you guys are like way better than me at singing. But I guess like I didn't know that it was I guess because songwriting is so natural for me, I didn't know it was so hard for other people to write. So it was kind of cool to like be in that position of like being a good writer. Like, oh, I'm like a good writer and people want to write with me. And that's
Yeah.
kind of cool. So,
Yeah. No, it's you're in the John Mayer example is a great point. It's like there are only so many voices that can be like the best. Like there are only
right.
so many artists that we can listen to for the sake of them being like this outstanding talent just from the singing standpoint. And it's like
Right.
there's so many other people that have so much other ideas and things to offer. And so like it's ultimately just kind of this lean into where your like ultimate strengths lie. Like you can be good at the other stuff, but where that like standout thing is like that's your thing. That's what you kind of have to hit the ground running with.
Right. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Like I don't know, like John Mayer's like I always say like John Mayer's my dad, but it's just because I think that I was literally just talking about this. Like the Gen Zers these days, they don't like him, but they don't really realize that like their favorite artists probably love John Mayer. Like and I think that he's just a great storyteller. There's just a lost art in like telling a good story, you know? And um I don't know. He just has a way with words that I think I just admire so much. But we can get into my inspirations later because I could talk about John Mayer for like hours on end. But
It's nice to hear a name other than Taylor Swift when we talk about the why I write music or like, you know,
that is
like
so funny.
it's I've heard that name too many times to count on here. It's we need
It's
a breath of
not,
fresh air, and the breath of fresh air today is John Mayer.
which is crazy because John Mayer and Taylor Swift are a little bit connected for a reason, but they, they're definitely connected and they definitely, I don't know if they have beef, but like, you know, I hope the Swifties don't come for me. I'm sorry, guys. My hands are up.
Um, what do you find most often inspires a lot of your songwriting?
Ooh, just my life, I think. A lot of my writing, obviously, if you've if I mean if you're new here or if you're not new here, um a lot of my writing comes from, my my love life, my experiences. I think um I was always just like, oh, like, why am I guess I was like, I wish I could write about other things, but like these are things that happen to me, you know what I mean? And these are the way that I'm processing them. And I'm also like kind of sick of, I guess like I've always felt like shame. Like I have this song called Crying Over Boys where I said like I'm getting too old to be crying over boys. But the thing about it is like those are still like real feelings. Like there's still like real emotions, there's still real experiences, you know? And I'm not really embarrassed by it anymore. I'm not like I was never really embarrassed by it, but like I was just kind of like, well, this is just like my life. You know, these are the experiences of my life, and I would say I'm very inspired by my life experiences. Um but also I'm inspired by like some of my songs are from like my friends' lives, or like little things like, or I'll be watching a movie and I'll be like, ooh, that's such a good line. I could just like put that in a song somewhere. Like little things just inspire me. But I would say a lot of the content I'm writing about, it stems from like my life, or specifically my love life. So
I mean, you can't write anything better than writing what you know. You
yeah,
know,
I think
like the
that's such a
things you
great
live
point.
is just like that's
Mm,
that's gonna be that's the easiest thing, and it's like you're getting like new content and ideas like
yeah,
every day.
yeah, absolutely. And I think as a certified yapper, I just can talk about the same thing for hours and hours and hours on end. So in the same way, I can write songs about the same thing over and over and over again and still have a unique way of saying it every time. And I think that's like so cool about art a lot of the time. It's like I am feeling this thing that I've been feeling, but how can I approach it in a way that is different from the last time I've approached it? I feel like I'm I'm a psychoanalyzer, or I'm very introspective and I think a lot. So I have so many thoughts and so many emotions that I write about, and also I have yet to write about. You know what I mean? I feel like some of the ways that I've been able to heal or even just like process is by like kind of like doing surgery on this wound, not just like taking the band-aid off and just looking at it. It's almost like I'm opening it up and being like, okay, so like what's actually in here, and what else do I feel besides just this pain that I see on the surface, you know?
Yeah. And sometimes, like, when you initially sort of approach an idea and it doesn't quite hit the first time, like, whatever you try and write
Mm-hmm.
about is like,
Right.
that just doesn't land yet. And we're like, we're just not,
Right.
we haven't
Mm-hmm.
opened that one up yet, at least not
Mm-hmm.
enough to see what's going on to actually be able to do some work here.
Right.
And it is always interesting how you can write so much about the same thing without them like completely overlapping or sharing
Right.
like a lot of the same qualities, where it's like, okay, this is just like a tweaked version of the first
Right.
thing. Like
Right.
it's endless, because you can like, especially as we evolve as people, you approach these ideas from a new and evolved perspective. And so
Right.
it's like the way you felt about it a year ago is going to be different than the way you feel about it now. You've had more time with it. You've had,
Right.
you've got a different perspective because life's different now.
Right. Exactly. So I don't know. There's just like so many different ways to write. Like I don't know. It's just I don't know. I also think it's a good way to work that muscle of writing as well. Where like I hate to like quote John Mayer again, but or like just talk about him again, but he just has so many like nuggets. Like I remember, I think I heard he did like a clinic at the college I was at, and he was talking about the songwriting hose, where it's just like, you know how when you turn a hose on for the first time, like some of the water is like dirty at first, but then like you wait for it to clear. That's just kind of like how it is when you're a writer. Sometimes you turn the hose on and the the first idea isn't great, but then you just keep writing and keep writing, keep writing, and then you get into that flow of like, oh no, this idea is good, and this idea is good, and this idea is good, you know? And so that's why I don't really like feel as much anxiety about having writer's block sometimes, because I'm like, these just aren't the good ideas yet. And I'll get to the good ideas as long as I just like keep writing and keep going. So
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes how the initial idea sort of comes out, it's like, okay, 80% of this is not as good as it was when I thought I like when I initially wrote it.
right.
But like there's that one piece of it where it's like, whether it's like a line or even just the way the
Mm-hmm.
chords are, whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is, that you can kind of be like, okay, well, there's this one piece of this that's salvageable. We're going to
Right.
take that and we're going to make it a new idea.
Right. For sure. Yeah. I don't know. I just love writing a lot. And again, I think it's just because I'm a deep thinker and a deep feeler, and I love to talk. So
I mean,
they
it's a
all
good,
just
it's
kind of come together.
I was gonna say it's a good little combination of like the writing and then like it's like you just don't run out of ideas and then you get to keep doing the thing that you love because of all the ideas. It's like
Right.
it's a good little combo you got going on.
Yeah, thank you. I'm trying my best.
If you had to create a new genre around your style of music,
Oh
what
my
would it be
gosh.
called?
A new genre or my style of music? That's such an interesting question. A new genre.
Like a I think of it in like a category of one kind of way where it's like what is it that like if your catalog was a genre, what is it going to be called?
I guess I would I don't know. I mean, I've always been like a certified like sad like wholesome sad girl. Like that's always been like my thing. But I would almost kind of say like if it could be a genre, like it would be like if Sabrina Carpenter was black or if SZA was more wholesome. Like that would kind of be the genre that I think I make. Because I make pop music, but I think because I have a little bit of a culture and yeah, I think it would again yeah, I don't really know how to say it other than like if Sabrina Carpenter was black or SZA was a little more wholesome. Like I feel like it's a combination between, I mean, those are artists that I love so much and artists that I'm definitely inspired by. Um but I don't know what to categorize it as. I mean, it's definitely pop, but
I
that's all I got
I
for you. I'm sorry.
no, I think that's one of the best answers I've gotten to be honest.
Great. I'm so
Because everybody
glad.
always wants to go like indie pop, rock, folk, like just throw a bunch of genre words together. And it's like
Yeah.
that's if that's what I wanted, that's what I would have asked for, you know?
Right, for
So
sure.
like I mean, it doesn't really get more on the nose than if Sabrina
Sabrina
Carpenter was
Carpenter was
black
black,
or if
or if
SZA was
SZA
more
was more
wholesome.
wholesome. That's kind
Like
of just
tell it
what it
like it is.
is.
That's what you just did. Like it
That's
doesn't
kind
have
of
to
how
be in
it
the form
is.
of a genre. You said it exact like that's what it is.
Yeah, that's what I think it is. People have actually been texting me and being like, "Did you ghostwrite for the new Sabrina Carpenter album?" Because a lot of it sounds like stuff you would say. I was like, "That is the highest compliment," but I did not ghostwrite for her. One day I will write for her for sure, but today is not that day. But
Oh, I love that. That's so funny. That I mean, call it a genre title if you want, but that's perfect. That's
great.
it's there's your
Thank you.
category right there. There you go.
Do you
Question
like Sabrina
answered.
Carpenter? Do you wish she was black? Well, I got some news for you.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Is there a song that you've written that you think best embodies who you are as an artist? Like your one song sample of
Ooh.
like, hey, if you like this, you'll like the rest of the catalog. If you like this, you should be a fan. What's your like one song elevator pitch?
Ooh. One song?
I know.
It's so difficult because I feel like I've grown so much as a writer and an artist. So it's like from like my writing from 2017 to my writing to now, it's like I am just thinking like what would be me, like me. Ugh, and especially since I'm working on some new stuff now, it's kind of crazy. I would say honestly, I think crying over boys probably would be like the most me. I think also it combines like those I think that one specifically is definitely Sabrina Carpenter if she was black for sure. Um I think I don't know, I think it shows like my development as a writer, and it also shows like my heart a little bit as well. And it has some of my favorite lyrics in it, or like my favorite lyric that I've written, which is you made a joke out of me, but I guess you always said I was funny. And I feel like the cleverness of that is kind of like who I am as a person, where it's I've obviously and in that line specifically, it's like obviously this is a person who's been hurt, but like obviously, and this person clearly has a lot to say about that, you know what I mean? And I think that song sonically, I think is so cool. It's definitely pop, SZA, Sabrina. Yeah, I would say crying over boys, I would say would be like my elevator pitch. And that's my roommate's dog. That's Minnie. Okay,
Do you
just
think that
one
that
second.
is also like the forecast of what's to come? Like you say, you're working on stuff new. Do you think that that also like that song kind of aligns with what's in the works and on the way?
Yeah, I think that honestly that song was the start of me just maturing a little bit more sonically. I think you can hear a lot of elements from that in what I'm working on right now. I think in the last year and a half, I've been really into vocal production as well. One of my other inspirations is Brandy. I don't know if you know who Brandy Norwood is, but and she's like obviously she's called the vocal Bible. And in like the early stages of her career, she, was working with Rodney Jerkins a lot, and he was and he was challenging her to do like a lot of vocal stacks and really kind of change the game with like vocal production. And I think um that is something that I've been diving into a lot more. So Crying Over Boys, there's a lot of vocal production in there, and I think that was kind of like the catalyst of me challenging myself to do more vocal production, do more vocal stacks, be a better singer. um so I think there are elements from Crying Over Boys that kind of like made me realize like, oh no, like I can be a little more different. I just didn't want to do like, I don't know if you got the chance to listen to my first album, but it was very like indie pop, very sugary, like straight up pop, which is cool. um but I kind of wanted to like, I don't know, be a little bit more mature sonically, maybe dive a little more into the indie space, like kind of maybe move maybe like cusp on R&B a little bit, like bring those pop R&B elements from Brandy, and like bring that songwriter element of like John Mayer, and bring like that honesty from Sabrina Carpenter and SZA like together. And so I've been kind of morphing all of that, um and developing like a more mature like era of music, which I really like. And I think Crying Over Boys was kind of the start of me doing that.
And so when does Crying Over Boys fall in like the timeline? When was that one?
That one was actually, it was August 2023.
Okay.
So that one, yeah, it was released August 2023. And I think um I like loved it. I wrote it with my good friend Austin Davis, and um he he and I always write something like really cool every time, which I think is like so great about working with. I don't know, we have great like writing chemistry, and like he's just like a good guy, so it's like really fun to write with him. Um and like it's like every time I read a song with Austin, I'm like crying on his couch and he's like, it's okay. And then we write something so good. So yeah, it I think it was 2023. Well, we wrote it at the top of 2023 and then released it August 2023. And I was just like, no, like I think I really love the way this my writing is going, and I want to kind of dig deeper and like get a little mature, and let's see like what I can do, like how I can grow sonically and all of that. So
Yeah, I mean it's always really cool because, at different points throughout your journey as an artist, like when you're first kind of starting out, whether I mean, obviously it varies depending on how long you've been writing and everything, but in that early stages it's like you want to do this and you want to do that and you want to try these different things if you haven't already found kind of your lane or a general kind of cusp of where you're at. But, you do those early things and you try out those different sounds, but then as you kind of, you know, after you put an album out, after you put projects together and release multiple songs, like you're kind of are like, okay, now I can kind of like you can kind of cater down more towards what you're really wanting, and you kind of have eliminated the things that maybe this isn't for me, finding the things that maybe are. And, like you said with this one, like you're kind of getting to that stage where it's like, okay, we can be more refined with this. We can find a way to kind of blend these different things and be intentional with XYZ about it, and, experiment with it, but like already have this locked down sense of like who you are as an artist and what your sound really is.
yeah, exactly. Again, like you're always like consistently developing that craft. You're always like consistently, I mean, I think you should always be consistently developing as an artist and trying to be better than what you did before, or just trying to be different or being fresh. Which is why I don't necessarily believe that any artist has like a flop era. I think that like it's so easy to call people flops these days, but I think they're doing something, if they're doing something out of their comfort zone or something that's a little more interesting than what they did before, and they're trying something new, they're just kind of challenging themselves. Like the greatest example for me with that is, not for me, but like that I've seen with that honestly was like Lady Gaga's like Joanne era, where everyone was like, why is she making country music? Like, why is she like wearing a giant hat and riding a horse? Like, but there are so many good songs on that Joanne record. And I think it was cool for her to do, because it was like was doing like the dance pop thing so well that like you can't just like pigeonhole artists. And I think that if you try something else, even like if you try something else, you know what I mean, and try to execute it in a way that's like for your fan base, like I don't know, I just think, again, I don't believe in flop eras. I think that you can try something new, and if people love it then they love it, and if they don't love it then they don't. At least you challenged yourself and you made something that you never thought you would make, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
No, I think that's a good example of like following her, like your own artistic calling or journey or
right,
whatever you want to call it. Like if that's the itch that you need to scratch it. If
right.
you just try and stay in your lane of like, the foundation that you've built and are just like you pigeonhole yourself because that's what you think people expect of you, then you're doing yourself a disservice, because the thing that you could have possibly done that maybe like was calling your name from a distance, like maybe that's the path that you should have taken, and that could have been a really, really cool project. There are definitely cases where it's like you just go too far down the rabbit
Yeah,
hole and just
there
kind
are
of are
cases
like,
where it's like maybe you shouldn't have done that one.
yeah,
You
maybe
could
we
have kept
should
that
maybe
one in the vault a
yeah,
little
maybe
bit.
we should have done something different here instead of the same thing but not as good.
Right, 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 right. I'm not
So,
going to name any names, but we've
no.
seen it many times. So,
Yeah. 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 There's a few that come to mind, but they shall remain nameless.
Nameless for sure.
um, if you had to pick two or three artists that you think your
Mm-hmm.
music is like a combination of,
Mm-hmm.
who would it be?
I mean, I've touched upon it already, but I would say again, like Sabrina Carpenter if she was black. SZA if she was more wholesome, and hmm, I guess it would be like SZA, John Mayer, and Sabrina Carpenter. Actually, if I'm being honest, it would be SZA, John Mayer, and Julia Michaels. I would say. Those are probably the three.
I'm swapping out Sabrina for Julia now.
Yeah, just because Julia has written a lot of songs for Sabrina. So inherently, I love Sabrina because I love Julia. Not to say
Fair.
Sabrina didn't write a lot of songs, but I am saying is that I know that Julia not only has written for her, but has written for everybody. So it's like
Mhm.
if I like a song and Julia Michaels is on the writing credit, of course I like
Yeah.
that song. It's because Julia Michaels wrote it, you know? um and she also is great as an artist in her own right, and she writes songs for herself. It's so incredible. So I would say Julia Michaels, SZA, and John Mayer are probably the three if I had to like pick.
What aspects of those would you say that you see come through in your music most? Like, what is it like? What
Mm.
is that like? Oh, I can hear the Julia in that, or in the John Mayer in that. Like, where did those influences kind of feed into then the end result?
I think with John Mayer, I think the storytelling kind of, I was like, oh, I feel like John Mayer would probably like, or like, oh, that was such a John thing, or like I just wrote this song called Heaven with my friend Austin, and there were some chords we used, and we were like, we love John Mayer so much, you know. We were like some chords that we like, sometimes chord changes, I'm like, that's such a John Mayer thing right there. And I think with Julia, it's her lyricism and honesty. Sometimes I feel like I am inspired by, for sure. SZA again, I think it's the same thing, like her lyricism and her honesty. I think, and when you're able to be honest and authentic and say the things, like they're able to be like, both SZA and Julia are able to make their personal experiences universal. So it's like they're saying stuff that like everybody for some reason has experienced, and they're like, oh no, I relate to that. And I think relatability and like almost diary entry like writing is like something I've been doing for so long. And obviously, like I think because I've been inspired by Julia and SZA, those things kind of just like come out a little bit more. So um I think my honesty and like being a little bit clever, I would say, in writing is probably where those influences come.
Yeah, I mean, this we keep coming back to the storytelling, but that's at the heart of it. Like, if that's
Mm-hmm.
that is where it kind of goes from being just an idea to being this thing that can be this universal experience and this shared idea.
Right.
Because like that's why like storytelling beyond music is just like a thing. And it's like and it's so it seems so backwards that when you get into these detailed ways of spinning things and walking through previous experiences, that then it becomes, oh, I understand that, I can exactly, like, I know that situation in my own version. Like, it's suddenly when we're telling the specifics and getting down into it, that's where people are like, I get it. But if you just state the idea, then it's like it means nothing. It's how you kind of dance that line of, how am I going to say this in a way that's like honest, direct, truthful, etc., but also like have it be a thing that other people can connect with and relate to. And I think that that's and that storytelling is an art in itself, and then you put the music part into it, and it's like,
Yeah. It's like almost like you're creating a movie sonically, I think.
yeah, yeah,
And I don't know, I think there's a lot of, I think I do want to challenge myself a little bit more and kind of create scenes in songs, and not just in not just tell you how I feel, but like show you, you know what I mean? I think we're getting very specific these days with our lyrics, which I think is so cool. But I want to challenge myself to not like be as specific all of the time. You know what I mean? Or maybe even like create a scene and create a story and bring people into that space of like a moment I was having and how I felt in that moment. I don't know if that's a side note, but
If you don't try the new things, if you don't try and challenge yourself
mm-hmm.
in new ways, you're just going to be sitting in the lane that you're in and, not even knowing what's beyond it.
Right.
How we evolve. That's how we grow as people. You have to
Yeah.
go through the hard things to get better at other things.
Right. Exactly.
What is an outside passion of yours that you feel impacts who you are as an artist?
Ooh. An outside passion. I think there's two specifically. I think one, like my faith for sure. Um, I think my faith in God and just feeling like He's placed me on this earth to make music and to be a writer. Really like what like motivates me because I'm sure if I'm there's no doubt in my mind that if God wants me to do something, it's for the good of other people, not just to bless me. You know, I think songwriting and art has a way of, like setting people free in a way that other things don't. I think the heart of God is to like relate to people, and I think art has a way of imitating our lives that help us relate to one another. So if I'm able to participate in that, I would love to be able to help someone out. I mean, there's been moments where I've wanted to quit, and then like I get this like DM from someone that's like, I heard your song and it like it touched me, and it like totally brought these emotions that I was like processing to light, and it's like helping me and all these things. And like I remember one time I was like at church, and there's this song I have called 24 where I was talking about like I was going into like my mid 20s at the time, and like like when you go into your mid 20s, you're like, I'm getting old. I was turning 24. Like I'm 28 now. So I was like, what was I scared about? Anyway, that's the sidebar. And I remember this girl, she came up to me and she was like, hey, I just want to tell you that like I've been going through a really hard time, and your song 24 is like the thing that was like getting me through it. And like honestly, things like that mean more to me than like any record deal I could ever sign. Honestly, like people like having a face that told me being like, no, like this song has impacted me is like such an important thing. And I think it just shows like there is purpose behind your art regardless of what stage you're in. So I think obviously like my faith in God for sure. um but also I think um I love movies and film a lot, and I love like film analysis. And I don't know if you've gotten a chance to like look at any of the content that I've made, but they look like very cinematic and like very like specifically for Crying Over Boys and Green Eyes. Those two are like the most cinematic to me, and it's because I want to create like like I think music and film go hand in hand, and I want to create like a world and a feeling that captures exactly what this song is. Like this is what this song feels like. You know what I mean? Um and so I think because I love film and because I love like analyzing film and color and like all that stuff, like I'm in this like whole thing where I'm feeling super nostalgic and I want to watch all these movies in Technicolor because like Technicolor was just so beautiful. But they don't do it anymore. Sorry, I'm not trying to be like, well, actually, but like they don't do it anymore, and that bothers me. Anyway, so I'm like, I'm like a film. I love like looking at a good, like the great cinematography, and I think that is something that also influences me as an artist.
Do you think that has there, or I guess, has there been any like specific occurrence that you can recall that like you have watched some sort of like some film or something and then it has led to an idea for a song that then has like is there anything in your catalog that we can tie back to a said movie film experience?
Actually, yes. Um, my first song that I've ever put out, Vegas. I was watching Ocean's 11.
Good movie.
I was watching Ocean's 11, and my friend who was with me was like, "Oh my god, like I fell in love with Vegas when I went there." And I was like, "Oh, that sounds like a song." Like if you're a, all my friends hate me. All my friends back home hate me because they'll be like talking, and I'll be like, like pull my phone out and I'll start typing, and they'll be like, "Amber, you can't write songs about us anymore." And I'm like, "But what you're saying is so good."
Perfect.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, "What you're saying is so good. Like I have to put it in a song. Like what are you talking about?" But yeah, I was watching Ocean's 11, and my friend said, I fell in love with Vegas when I went there. And I was like, oh, I fell in love with Vegas. And I wrote a song called Vegas like a few days later. So,
Yeah.
so there was a movie that was attached.
There-
Everybody go watch Ocean's 11. It's so good.
and then listen to Vegas.
And then listen to
And
Vegas.
then
It
listen
is,
to Vegas.
yeah, it is my first single ever. So it probably doesn't sound the greatest, but it's still good. I promise.
Um, no, but I'm gonna jump back to what you said at first, like with the whole like faith in God thing. Like I the whole, having someone in front of you say this song impacted me over anything else, like you're right. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's art is just this. I don't know. I don't remember exactly how you said it, but you like art is just the way to it is what brings people together and it is forming that
Right.
sense of community and it is like at the core of what connects us all in some way shape
Right.
or form. Music is the universal language, like as cliche and as dumb as it sounds in plain
It's
terms. It's
true
so
though.
true. It's so
Yeah.
true.
I think
Yeah.
all art can be is a universal language. We're all just, again, like we're all just telling stories in different ways. Like if you do photography or if you paint or you make movies or write music, all of that is just telling a story. And again, like there is no experience that any of us, I love how on the internet right now people hate that they've never had a unique experience, but I honestly think everyone's like, oh, I've never had a unique experience, but it's like honestly that like to me proves that like we're all connected in a way. If we've all have had never had a unique experience, I feel like that should bring us together. And like when people make art about everyone's like their unique experience, but it's somehow is able to relate to everybody. I don't know, it's able to connect us together.
Yeah. I mean, the human experience is a universal thing. We all go through the same things.
Right.
You fall in love, you go through breakups, you
Right.
deal with grief, you deal with
Right.
hardship. There's all these
Right.
different things that that's just life.
Right.
That's just what it is. And so like, yeah, it is a unique experience, but it's also like you're gonna find some other way to compare it to something that has happened to somebody else. There's not really any
Right.
such thing as a unique experience anymore.
Right. Which I think is fine.
Yeah.
Like everyone wants to be a contrarian. You're not special, guys. Come on. Get over it. let's just let's just get over the fact that none of us are that special. Come on.
True.
Just live.
Yeah, just let it be. Let it be what it's gonna be.
Yeah.
This is the point of the podcast where I take the question from last week's artist for this week's artist. And so the question from last week for you is, What live performance has impacted you the most?
Ooh, like my own or watching someone.
I'll take either.
Mm, I want to say this is gonna sound insane because it's 2024, but probably honestly, it's Ed Sheeran from like 2014. I think he was on the Multiply tour. This is like peak Ed
Oh,
Sheeran.
yeah,
This
yeah,
is
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
this is like when Ed Sheeran was Ed Sheeran. You know what I
Thinking
mean?
out loud,
Thinking
you
Out
know.
Loud,
Yeah.
like Tenerife Sea. That was one
Yeah.
of my
That's
favorite
such a good
albums.
album.
It was
That's
such
such a
a
good
great album.
album.
And one of my friends from high school was like, "Hey, do you want to go to the Ed Sheeran concert with me?" And I was like, "Yes." It was like my second day of school. It was like my second day of college. And I think I like skipped a class or something to go to a concert. And it was like so incredible to like watch him. And I remember being like so inspired afterwards. And it was like I think I remember I like cried and like I know like people have whatever they want to say to about Ed Sheeran now, but to me, I was watching him perform and I was watching these songs that I loved so much. And I was just like, that, this is what I want to do forever. Like, I would love to do that. And the thing is, he didn't even have anybody, like, he didn't even like have anybody with him. It was just him, his guitar, and like a loop pedal. And he like was selling out a stadium. And it was like so incredible. And I think something like that was just like there was something about it that was like so inspiring to me. It was just like that's just what I want to do forever. I want to be a great writer. I want to be a great performer, and I want to be able to do that forever in front of as many people as I can. And I think that really was what made me remember that it's what I wanted to do. Even though like I already knew, but I think it just kind of did something to me.
Yeah, I mean, he's the perfect example of letting the songs like speak for themselves. Like very
Right.
rarely does he have anything that's like produced up very much. Like even his like most
Right.
recent album is still sounds very Ed Sheeran and guitar, and that's all
Mm-hmm.
there is to it. Like
Right.
it's the perfect like yeah, it's the perfect of just letting stories be stories, letting songs be songs, and not letting anything else like ever even possibly stand in the way of that, and just letting songs be what they're going to be.
Right. Exactly. Again, like everything is about telling good stories and like writing good songs. And I think we need to focus on that. Like people are always like, where are the songs? Where are the writers? You know, like people are like the music industry is cooked. And it's like just like write a good song and be good at what you do, you know, and stop being in competition with everybody, you know? It's just one of those things. Like I think people consumers they crave authenticity. And I think if you're true to who you are and true to yourself and true to your art, then people will see that.
Yeah, absolutely. What is your question for the next artist?
Mm. If you could have dinner with any artist, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
That's a good classic.
Yeah. Yes.
uh
Or maybe
oh,
three artists, dead
three
or alive.
artists. Okay.
Any three artists that are alive that you could have dinner with.
What is it that you think sets you apart from other independent artists?
Ooh. Wow, what a question. And I also feel so weird answering that. Like,
It doesn't have
this
to
is
be in
why
like a
I'm better
hierarchy
than
sense
you.
kind of way. Like it's just like, what is your separation factor? Not necessarily in terms of like a quality up or down, but in like a what's unique to what you're doing? What is a new thing that you're bringing to the music landscape and its conversation? What's special?
Oh, I think what's special is, as a Black woman who doesn't make exclusively R&B, I think that is, I'm not going to say that it's radical, but I think I've always been true to like being me, which is like a pop artist and a pop writer. And I think that a lot of the time people don't take Black women seriously in anything except for rap or R&B or like soul music. And it's almost like they try to like confine us and put us in these boxes of like, this is what Black people do, so go and do that because that's what Black people do. And I personally, like, I love R&B, I love rap, I love, I love Black genres, I love Black music, but those genres never really felt like my authentic artistic expression. I appreciate it in other people and I love it, um, when it is authentic to other people. But what's always been authentic for me was me with a guitar in my room. Me, like me making pop music has always been an authentic expression for me. And I want to be able to, like create pave a way for a little Black girl who wants to make pop music. You know what I mean? Who's like looking at me and like wants to play guitar, and like that's so cool. You can play guitar and you can make pop music, and it can be shimmery, glittery pop, and it doesn't have to be R&B. It doesn't have to be rap. And I think that's what makes um me unique. There are a lot of artists that are doing it right now. Like, I don't know if you know who Jensen McRae is, but she's like a great like folk um writer, and she's Black, and I really love that. And my really good friend Kayla Thompson, she makes pop music as well, and I think that we want to be, I think the thing is like we all want to be authentic to who we are and express ourselves in a way that's authentic to who we are. And I think I'm just sick of people putting Black people, Black women in boxes and saying like this is the only way to be Black in our society, when like we've never put a cap on other races to be anything. We hear white people do R&B all of the time. We see white people do rap all of the time. But the second a Black girl gets a guitar, you're like, you're not supposed to do that. And I don't, and that's not cool at all, actually. So yeah, I hope that answered your question.
No, it does, and it's always in whatever whatever set guideline, for lack of the better word, that's kind of, or I guess stereotype might even be a better word, is like whatever it is that's like, it's always interesting to see people go against the grain, and
Mm,
not in a way of like, oh, like, it's quirky, it's eccentric, it's whatever, but in like a like, no, let's challenge the narrative kind of way. It's like that's the only way that as a collective there's growth, and in a certain direction, is when you have those sort of things that are like, no, like what you set as like a boundary for me isn't a boundary that I'm accepting, or it's one that I'm taking, and it's not necessarily the way that things have to be, even if it's been, even if it's what you expect. Like it can be something new and different. We can have this piece of the pie just as much as we can have this one, like it can be whatever we want it to be, and that's fine. and
right.
that's and so I think you make a really good point. Obviously I can't speak to it the way that you can, but like
Right.
I love the challenging that, doing something new, and just doing something that, like you said, like what we keep coming back to is like doing what feels like you're
Right.
supposed to be doing. Like
Right.
don't it doesn't have to be what you think I should be doing and filtered through this like lens of that's what, Black people in music are supposed to be doing. It's,
Yeah,
let me
for
just do what I
sure.
want to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, just let me be me. And obviously, like, people like what I'm doing. You know what I mean? What what I'm doing. And I think that that is important. I think that what I'm doing is important. And like the people who are going to stay, and the people who aren't going to stay are not. That's really it.
Yeah. No, it's there's a corner of the landscape in varying sizes, but there's a little space in the wide range of music that there is for everybody, and there is a there's a little pocket of whoever's going to be like your fan that they like they're somewhere. It's just a matter of whether you're finding them, what timeline you're finding them at. It's like I feel like there's your music will find a home in somebody's ears regardless of what it is. It's and some people will like it, some people won't, but that goes for everything. It's like it's not for everybody, it's not supposed to be for everybody. If we're trying to make it for everybody, that's when it becomes for nobody.
Right.
So
Exactly.
what impact do you want to have with your music and with your artistry? I feel like this is kind of
Ooh.
hopping off of the last one a little bit, but if there's more to it, let's get.
Impact. Hmm. Yeah, I think the impact is that black people and black women can do and be whatever they want to be. You know, they can they can do and be whatever they want. And I think it's very unfortunate how uh racism and yeah, just racism and capitalism just has conditioned people to believe that black people and black women are not marketable, and like they can't appeal to the masses, and that they're not relatable. And I just don't think that's true. um and I would love to be part of making space for black people to be seen and known in every authentic expression, like in every facet, like whether you make folk music, whether you make rap, hip hop, like I don't know, whether you're an opera singer or a jazz singer, like there is space for us, and we deserve to be there. And I want to work as hard as I can to continue to pave that. And I always think about how, like, when I was a kid, I would watch TV and I would never see any pop stars that looked like me. I never saw any any pop stars that looked like me. There was no black girl with a guitar. There was always a white girl with a guitar. And why can't there be a black girl with a guitar that makes sugary, pretty music? Why can't there be? And I hope that one day a little black girl will see me on TV, and it's like, oh, I want to be like that when I grow up. I had Hannah Montana and I love her, but I want to be a little black girl's Hannah Montana one day.
I think that's the like if Sabrina Carpenter was black version of this answer is I want to
Yeah,
be some little
one
girl's
new girl's
black
black
Hannah
Hannah
Montana.
Montana.
That's perfect. I think that brings us to the final question, which is ultimately the concept behind the podcast, which is
Mm,
why music?
mm. Why music? Why not music? Honestly, I mean, I've been making music, I guess, like since I was a kid. I've been writing since I was a kid, and I think it's the place I feel the most honest. It's the place I can be the most vulnerable. And I again want to be able to help people in any way that I can. I think at the end of the day, being a musician, I think one of my professors said, like, being a musician is the only is a service industry. Like it's the only profession where you don't get to consume what you make. Or like what you make is not for you. You know what I mean? What you make is for other people. For a moment it's for you, because when you're writing it, when you're making it, that's when it's for you. Like, but once it's out in the world, it's not yours anymore, you know? And I want to make sure that like what I put out in the world, what I'm saying in the world is vulnerable and authentic and honest. Um, and I want to be able to like, say the things that people are afraid to, or like have people feel things that they haven't felt because they haven't allowed themselves to feel it. So that's why I make music.
I think, I mean, you're right. Once it's yours until it's not anymore, and then it's
Right.
it's everybody else's, and that's something that's like really special about putting it out there into the world. It's like, oh, it's technically a loss because it's not yours anymore, but at the same time, it's like it's so much to gain getting to have that effect on the people receiving it. Like having those people that come up to you and tell you that your song 24 are is like just
Right.
hard hitting in the right ways. Like
Right.
it's that's all you can ask for.
Yeah. And I I don't know if you like ever watched like a Donald Glover like stand-up special, but he had like this joke where he was just like, being a musician is like the only industry where you can't enjoy what you make. He was like telling this story about how he was sitting in the car with one of his friends and he had his headphones in, and someone was like, "Are you listening to your own music?" And he was just like, "Yeah." And he was like, it's like, say you work at Subway and you go home and you make a sandwich. Like, no one is like, "Oh, someone's getting a little conceited, aren't they?" Like, no one is saying that. But like, only to musicians, like, if you're listening to your own music, people are like, "Ew, why are you doing that?" And yeah, I mean, again, like, all that to say that it really isn't like the music is never going to be for me. Like, of course, like when I'm writing it, when I'm making it, when it's in the demo phase before it even like touches the ears of anybody else, it'll be mine for that moment. But like once I like put it out, it's not mine. It's for someone else. My experiences become somebody else's experiences. And again, it just is there to connect us all. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was my own Spotify. I was on my own Spotify Wrapped once, and I was like, I can't. This automatically is like
I
a do not
cannot post
share.
that.
This is a do not share.
I can't post
this
that.
this needs to
It's
just.
so funny.
Oh, I didn't have a Spotify Wrapped this year. Oh, big go figure.
Oops. Uh oh.
They forgot to do mine. I don't know.
That's so funny.
But
I
yeah.
guess they lost mine. I don't know. It
Yeah.
was lost in the mail or
I never got I
something.
never got the email. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, you're right. It is. I mean, you look at it and it's like you can't you like can consume it yourself, but you also just like it's different. It's also different once it's like it's even different. I feel like listening to it when it goes from the point of, oh, this is like the like wave file on my phone to being like, oh, I'm streaming this on Spotify.
Right.
Because then it's like other people can do that and then it's different. But you're right, it is for you in that experience of creating it and letting it come to form and, you know, get to the point where it's ready to go out into the world.
Right.
So
Yeah.
awesome. Well, I think that is the end of this episode of the Why Music podcast. You can check back again next week for another conversation with another independent artist. Thanks for listening.